What is up, everybody, and welcome to this month's Patreon pick video. If you're not familiar with what that is, I have a Patreon page with the link down in the video description below, which is essentially my crowdfunding site, where if you enjoy what I do, if you enjoy this channel, and you want to help contribute financially to it, and maybe even get quite a few exclusive perks alongside all of that, that is the place to go. And once a month, I allow all of my patrons to give suggestions for video ideas, and then I pick my favorites out of those, put a poll up, and whatever one reigns supreme ends up becoming a video. And this month, the winner is my top 10 favorite horror movie endings. Now, this was actually kind of a tough top 10 because there's a ton of great horror movie endings. My initial little draft list was like 25 movies, and even that felt like I left out a lot of great ones. So, yeah. There's probably a lot of movie endings. If you asked me tomorrow, would probably switch places with a few over here. But as far as how I feel today, this is my current top 10 favorite. Let me know your favorites down in the comment section below. And also, given that I am going to be discussing the endings of this movie, this is going to be an absolutely spoilerific video. So if I start discussing a film that you have not seen, and especially one that you have interest in, please just skip to the next segment. Do not let me ruin the movie for you. And then you can come back and see what my thoughts were after you've seen the film. With all that being said, guys, we're going to kick this off at number 10 with one of probably the most obvious answers to throw on a list like this. To me, this ending of the 10, even of the 25 that I had on my draft list, is the ending that I think is just most in the pop culture consciousness, and that's going to be The Sixth Sense from 1999. I think this is one of those endings like The Empire Strikes Back, where even if you've never seen the movie before, you know what happens at the end, because the whole Bruce Willis was a ghost is just something that's been brought up in multiple movies. It's been referenced multiple times. It's usually the quintessential example for an effective twist ending that just kind of exploded into the pop culture consciousness. But beyond all of that just being one of the more recognizable and well-known endings, it's just a fantastic ending. I remember watching this, granted I was 9 years old, and being totally shocked at the end of it, going, holy shit. And then you rewatch the film, and it's so obvious, like how many pieces throughout were just like laid in front of you of, obviously he's a ghost. Like there's so much throughout the film that just blatantly tells you that something is off. But because it's such great storytelling, because the performances are so great, because you're focused so much more on Haley Joel Osment and what's going on with him and his torment of the paranormal, that it's so easy to just pull the wool over your eyes. And I don't know if there's too many people out there on planet Earth that haven't seen this movie yet, but I would assume that if they watch it for the first time today and haven't had it ruined for them, it's still just as effective today. And, you know, it leaves you in a point where for a movie that's so bleak and so dark throughout most of it, the resolution that Haley Joel Osment's character has with his mother, Toni Collette, in regards to finally telling her what has been bothering him and what has been tormenting him, paired with Bruce Willis finally having that closure with his wife, is just a really beautiful, hopeful way to end this very dark, twisted movie. Coming in at number 9 is the most metal ending of all time, and that is going to be Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead from 2013. Basically, the whole third act of this film could fit into like my favorites of all time, but specifically just the last 10 minutes or so where that demon starts to come out of the ground, like the final boss, if you will. The skies open up and it starts raining blood, and Mia has to tear her own arm off and then just shoves a fucking chainsaw right in the face of the demon, and just, it is so awesome.
I will feast on your soul. Feast on this motherfucker.
It is so awesome that I think that's the most badass, like 5 to 10 minute sequence in the entire Evil Dead franchise. And it just leaves you off in a point where you're like, God damn, that movie rocked. When are we getting another one? Coming in at number 8, sticking with the Sam Raimi-ish theme, we got Drag Me to Hell. This is an ending that the title of the movie tells you right off the bat, before you've even seen one single frame of the film, where things are going to end. But it's such a wild, crazy, batshit insane film that part of you feels like maybe she's going to get out of this. Maybe she's going to escape this curse. Maybe Drag Me to Hell is just kind of the overall threat of the film. But when you get to the third act and it seems like she's followed all the rules, she is broken herself from this gypsy curse and she has ended things. And then you get her being all jovial and happy and meeting up with Justin Long and life's going to be great. And then he pulls out that fucking button. And the way that the sound just kind of goes out as her paranoia and panic sets in and she backs up over the top of the train tracks, and then suddenly the rocks start to break through and those arms come up and grab her. It's just fucking nuts. And experiencing the whole thing through the facial expressions of Justin Long makes it all the more insane and impactful. I mean, to me, Justin Long's always been a really underrated actor, but especially his work in the horror genre. The guy is just top fucking notch. And so the combination of the shock of what is going on with his facial expression, his realization of what is happening, the way that he looks back at the button, it's just a kick-ass way to end the movie that's been a wild ride, and then it just ends on this horrific note that all was for naught, and now she's tormented and she's burning in hell forever. Coming in at number 7 is a classic, Black Christmas. The original, not Black Xmas, not whatever that feminist bullshit was in 2019. The original, the only one worth discussing, with the exception of my buddy Dave McCrae's fan films. Can't wait for It's Me, Billy Part 2. But what I love about the ending of Black Christmas is that this has already been a very disturbing movie all throughout, with the sound design and the rising tension and sense of dread with the phone calls and the more of a slow burn slasher approach that it has. It's not one of those like slam bang exciting slashers. It takes its time really messing with you mentally, just toying with you as a viewer and getting you to genuinely fear for these girls and for this situation, which is what always has made it rise above the pack for me as far as slashers go. And the movie ends in a point where all throughout it, you've had this red herring set in front of you with the boyfriend of Jess Bradford. And it's done well enough where you almost believe maybe he's the one doing it, but you have just enough doubt. And when it comes down to her being finally face to face with Billy and chased through the house, and it ends with her thinking that it's her boyfriend, she takes him out, and then finally the evil is over. The police have found her. Everything's safe. There's no way anything bad could happen now. And the camera just slowly moves over to show that somebody is still in the attic. Billy is still alive. Billy is still planning on killing Jess Bradford, most likely. And even though the house is full of cops, the fact that they're not expecting that he is still up there means that very likely he could still do it and then move on to somebody else's house. And it ends it on this very uncertain, ambiguous note that just turns your stomach, where you're like, oh my God, I was hoping for some form of resolution, and the fact that you really didn't resolve anything is horrific. Coming in at number 6, an absolute classic, is going to be the original John Carpenter's Halloween. And what I love about the ending, I mean, it's a classic movie. We've talked about it ad nauseum. I've talked about it ad nauseum. But what's great about the ending, specifically with the 1978 film, is that it completely solidifies and reinforces what John Carpenter's original intent for the character of Michael Myers was, that he's human, but there's this supernatural edge to him.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
He's like a force of nature. He like moves with the wind, with the leaves. You know, he's somebody who's there and then he's not. And when you finally have Dr. Loomis that comes across Michael as he is trying to kill Laurie Strode, who's been going through hell for the last 30 minutes of the film, he runs upstairs, saves her, and just in the nick of time, pulls out his gun, puts 6 shots into him. I shot him 6 times! Michael falls over the balcony, hits the ground. You feel like the evil is finally over. The tension has been released. We're all safe. We're all good. And then he goes and looks over, and it's just this imprint. And the way that John Carpenter score kicks in while Loomis just looks up, and it shows all of these still shots of the house while Michael's breathing can be heard. That is what Michael Myers is to me. That is what really none of the sequels have been able to recapture that the 78 film did so masterfully. I mean, there's been so many different angles that we've taken the Michael Myers character, but none of them have been able to capture what the true best version of the character was than the 78 film. And that ending is a lot of the reason why. Coming in at number 5 is going to be Jeepers Creepers. I know some of you don't like discussing this film. Yes, I'm well aware of everything with the director. Let me just state that right out the gate. just talking about the film. I hate that I have to have that PSA every time I bring up Jeepers Creepers, but inevitably somebody in the comment section is going to be like, did you know? Yes, I'm aware. But speaking strictly on the film, it's one of my favorite horror flicks of all time. I think it's one of the greatest monster movies of all time. And the way that, similar to Drag Me to Hell, where all throughout the movie, they very blatantly tell you where things are going to go. I mean, with the title of the movie, with the onslaught and the relentless pursuit that the creeper has for this brother and sister, you know things are probably not going to end well. And all throughout the film, no matter what they do to this thing, whether they run him over in the road or they put a ton of bullets into him, nothing stops him. And when you get to the end of the film, after Derry has been ripped out of this building and this bat has taken him away and he just disappears into the sky while his sister is just looking on in shock and in dismay. And then the vision, the premonition that the town psychic detailed earlier on in the film about her hearing one of them screaming in the dark while the Jeepers Creepers song is playing finally comes to fruition, where it shows this new place that the creeper has chosen to be his workshop, if you will, that is just a very gross, unnerving visual going through this little warehouse or, you know, wherever the fuck it is with all these running, dripping pipes and everything. And you just hear Justin Long's screams get louder and louder and louder, and then eventually showing his body that has been disemboweled and everything else, and the eyes are gone. You know, all throughout the movie, the one big mystery is like, what does it want? What part of who does it want? You know, the way that the psychic character, for as much as that character could have very easily been a contrived exposition dump in that film, when she says that when it gets a scent for something at once, it'll stop at nothing until it gets it, and it wanted his eyes, which just brings the whole title of the film and everything together. When he stands up and you see Justin Long's eyes coming through from behind his disemboweled corpse, it's a fucked up way to end the movie. It's iconic as hell. It's always been one of my favorites. Coming in at number 4 is going to be John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, this is my favorite horror film of all time, so you knew it was probably going to show up on this list somewhere. And what I love about this ending is that it completely hammers home, much like he did with Halloween, the point of the film. He hammers home the paranoia. Even though they have seemingly destroyed the Thing, they have killed the Blair monster, there seems to be no more trace of this alien being anywhere. That was the end goal. They've accomplished it. Because Childs was missing for part of that third act, when him and MacReady come back face to face, Childs doesn't trust MacReady. MacReady doesn't trust Childs, but they both know that no matter what, it doesn't really matter. Because as MacReady says, I don't think either one of us are in much of a shape to do anything about it. So let's just sit here and see what happens. And it's always been one of those endings that to this day, 40 plus years later, people are still debating, like, who's the Thing? Is it Childs? Is it MacReady? Is it both of them? Is it neither of them? Well, I guess it couldn't be both of them. But regardless, people always to this day debate that. And I'm sure every time that, whether it's Kurt Russell, I don't know how many fan events he does, but whether it's Kurt Russell or it's Keith David, I'm sure they constantly get asked to this day, like, hey, just between me and you, were you the Thing? And much like the film Inception, what I love about the ending is that we can debate all day long on the answer to that question. There's theories out there regarding like the glimmer in the eyes. There's theories out there in regards to how the breath condensates and how the Thing doesn't in certain things, where people swear there's little Easter eggs, there's little puzzle pieces and breadcrumbs left throughout the movie where you can find your way to a definitive canonical answer. What I love about the ending, much like Inception, is that the answer to that question is not the point. The point is that they still don't trust each other. The point is that that paranoia and that distrust is still there, and it always will be for as long as they're still breathing, as this, Antarctic place, as this station is going up in flames. So it's just a brilliant, ambiguous way to end the film, to leave you just uneasy enough to where it doesn't feel like things were fully concluded or fully wrapped up. And it's one of my favorite endings of all time, coming in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 is going to be Sleepaway Camp. And as I said at the beginning of this video, if you have not seen these movies, please do not listen on. This is the one of the 10 that I will strongly urge you, and I'll remind you again, if you have not seen Sleepaway Camp, do not continue listening to what the fuck I am saying. Skip to the next one or stop the video. Go watch Sleepaway Camp. Do not let me ruin the ending of this film for you. Please, for the love of God. With all that being said, yes, Big Hairy Dick made it all the way up to number 3 of this top 10. This is one of the most shocking endings of all time. And it's an interesting story of how I got turned on to it, because I was reading an article where, I don't know if they were just talking to a bunch of different horror creators, or maybe they were just talking to Eli Roth. But Eli Roth was talking about how his memory of how he saw Sleepaway Camp for the first time with his friends, and how the ending just blew their minds and just fucked them up forever. And so I immediately stopped reading the article and went and downloaded Sleepaway Camp, less than legally at the time, and watched it. And I was just like, holy fuck, Eli Roth, thanks for that. And actually, when I met him at MegaCon earlier this year, I told him that story. I said, "You're responsible for traumatizing me twice, sir." I talked about seeing Hostel for the first time, and I talked about him turning me on to Sleepaway Camp. So yeah, the whole thing about this movie just being a very cheesy and dirty slasher, camp slasher, where I don't think that it's really all that well hidden that Angela is in fact the killer. You know, there's a few red herrings here and there, but that's pretty obvious that Angela's the killer. But that's not the reveal. The reveal at the end is not that Angela's the killer. It's who Angela is, what Angela is. And so it's one of those endings that I've had the pleasure of turning 2 people onto it, watching it with somebody that has never seen it or heard of the film, my wife and my youngest brother. And both of them had the exact same reaction, where they were, you know, they had a good time with it. It's a fun, goofy little slasher, whatever. This chick's obviously the killer, but this is still fun. And then you get the at the end, and they're like, what the fuck? Are you really? What the hell? And it's such an awesome experience. So even if you have seen Sleepaway Camp, find somebody that you don't mind mentally tormenting for the rest of their life, and do yourself a favor, treat yourself to the experience of watching that film with somebody that has no clue what is coming, because it's glorious. Coming in at number 2 is a movie that I reviewed not too long ago called Frailty, one of my all-time favorite movies, and something that is like one of the more ultimate hidden gems to me. And what I love about Frailty is it's the only movie that I can think of that has multiple twist endings. I mean, there's like 3 different twists back to back, I should say, in this film, and every one makes the previous twist better. Way too often when a film tries to have multiple twists, usually the first one goes off pretty well, and then it starts to get contrived, or the second twist kind of undoes what was so great about the last twist. There's very few that can just knock it out of the park a couple times in a row, and this movie is the one, if there ever was one. You know, the ultimate revelation about whether Bill Paxton's character was crazy or not. The ultimate revelation about the fate of Fenton's character and the implications of what the angel told Bill Paxton about his own son. The revelation of who Matthew McConaughey actually is, the somewhat unreliable narrator of the film. The ultimate twist about who he, even more so who he is as far as being a sheriff. And just so, like, the last 10 minutes or so of this film is just like mind fuck after mind fuck after mind fuck. And it's a brilliant movie even without all those twists. But when you have a movie that builds that much intrigue and builds that much, you know, suspense and that much anticipation in the viewer of finally getting the answers, and it's able to just knock it out of the park one after another, it's one of the greatest movies of all time, and it's one of absolutely the best horror movie endings of all time. But coming in at number 1 is something that is most likely going to spawn the "that's not a horror movie" thing in the comment section, but it is absolutely a horror movie to me, and that is David Fincher's Seven. If you don't want to consider this a horror film, fair enough. Then Frailty's my number 1. There's no reason to argue with me about it. To me, a horror film should horrify you. This movie is absolutely horrifying with the nature of these crimes and the implications of what John Doe is trying to accomplish. And what is so brilliant about this movie is that they think They make you think as a viewer that the ultimate revelation is going to be who is John Doe, the identity of the killer. That is traditionally what the climax of a murder mystery is finding out who the killer is and can we stop him in time. And this movie completely circumvents that and pulls the rug out from under you by 2/3 of the way through the film, having the killer walk up to the two lead characters and turning himself in and robbing them of the satisfaction of finding him. Because ultimately, that's not the ending of the film. It's not who the killer is. It's what the killer's trying to do. It's what the killer's end goal is. And as soon as he puts his arms in the air and says, "Detective!" from that moment on, he's in control of the movie. The viewers and the main characters are absolutely taken aback and have no idea where the fuck things are going to go. And all of the dialogue exchanges between Kevin Spacey and Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman from that point on just continue to reinforce that this guy's in control. This guy has already achieved what he wants to achieve, and now it's just about letting things play out. There's nothing for you to win. You have already fucking lost in ways that you cannot even imagine. And I've heard some people say that they were able to predict the ending. Good on you. I don't know how the hell you could, but when you have them standing in that field and that box gets delivered and they open the box and they have the grace to not show you what is inside of it. And ultimately it comes down to a test of Brad Pitt, whether he is able to take what has just happened and foil the plan of John Doe, or as John Doe has said multiple times, it's already over. I've already won. Like, you're going to become wrath, and succumbing to that and becoming the final deadly sin. It's just a fucking brilliant movie. It's a brilliant ending, and it's one of those where, much like with Sleepaway Camp, if you could find somebody that has not already had that ruined, is not already like aware of the pop culture consciousness of that film, that is one that it would just be fascinating to sit with somebody and watch their reactions in that last half hour or so. It's my favorite horror movie ending of all time, one of my favorite movie endings, period, of all time, and it comes in at number 1. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2024 new release reviews. I'm also going to put my previous Patreon pick, which was a horror directors tier list, up here. And please like, share, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. Be sure to consider becoming a Patreon member down below, and I appreciate your consideration for that. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.